saludar a Brendan McKenna, que es International Economist and FX Strategist at Wells Fargo Securities. Brendan, thank you so much for being here in Negocios Televisión.
Of course, thank you for having me.
This World Cup, Brendan, in Qatar is the most expensive in history. You say it in your reports. However, there you say that this tournament rarely is profitable, really. So do you believe Qatar actually thinks they will make a profit out of this World Cup?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at profitability. I think if you're just thinking about profitability from a revenue and expenses standpoint, I think it's very likely that Qatar actually thinks that they will not be profitable from a revenue perspective. So I think they're okay with actually taking that loss because their public finances are in such great shape. They have fiscal surpluses and debt levels are relatively low. But I think the other angle that you can look at it is that if Qatar is able to pull off a successful World Cup, and that's a very big if, I think there's a pretty good chance that financially there could be some success that's gained from foreign investment coming into Qatar and kind of helping the government along with its economic diversification strategy that they're looking to implement over the next couple of decades or so. So I think there's two different ways to look at it, but in the very short term, from a dollars and cents perspective, I think it's very possible that Qatar will wind up taking a large financial loss from organizing the World Cup.
Since the country was awarded the tournament in 2010, it has poured at least $200 billion into new infrastructure, including also $6.5 billion on stadiums and facilities. This was largely paid for by revenues from Qatar Energy's LNG exports. So this makes me ask myself the next question. Will Qatar Energy ever get that money back, the money it invested in the World Cup? Do you think Qatar's World Cup will make it export more natural gas?
I certainly think they'll make that money back. To your point, Qatar is a very large LNG and kind of natural gas exporter. And I think the one thing that probably should be noted is that the government is really making a very strong effort to enhance and improve their natural gas exporting capabilities by developing the North Field and some other gas fields within the country. So just from that perspective, it looks like the natural gas capabilities will certainly improve going forward. The other thing I should note is that with kind of the globally coordinated isolation of Russia, kind of given the events of this year, there's a very good possibility that Qatar is looking to export to different parts of the world, and demand for Qatari natural gas is going to improve also. So just from that perspective, from a demand perspective, there's also a pretty good chance that the financial impact that Qatar sees from a natural gas exporting perspective also improves, and that can help them regenerate some of the expenses that they spent on the World Cup.
One of the objectives one can think of for Qatar hosting this World Cup is having better reputation. But I'm asking myself the next question. Will a better reputation for Qatar actually have an impact on their economy? Did Qatar really have to host this World Cup in order to be a global player, or isn't it already a global player, especially on natural gas?
So I would certainly agree in the sense that Qatar is a player on the global stage just as a natural gas exporter. That's certainly true. But this kind of goes back to the point I was making earlier about Qatar doesn't just want to be a petrostate. They want to be involved in many different businesses. They want to diversify their economy a little bit more. And they've certainly done that over the last couple of decades or so. But I think going forward, they want to make additional efforts towards that diversification. And I think one of the ways that they can do that is actually hosting the World Cup, getting more eyeballs on the country, and eventually that can attract more foreign investment into the country. So I think hosting the World Cup is actually a great way to kind of raise your status on the global pedestal. Now, there's certainly been some issues around kind of labor conditions and kind of other issues within Qatar, but I would say that there has been some progress being made on those types of issues. So Qatar has done away with the kafala system. It made organizing unions a little bit more easier and kind of shifting some of the power back towards the employee instead of the employer. So if those types of reforms are continued to be made, I think that's also something that can attract more investment capital towards the country and kind of aid and kind of the shift away from just being a petrostate into more of this economic player across the global economy.
Qatar, Brendan, has some of the largest proved natural gas reserves. This is something you say on your report. It owns over 13% of proved natural gas reserves in the world. However, the country, we must say, is locked into long-term delivery contracts across Asia and is unable to divert exports to European Union countries. Nevertheless, in your report, you say that Qatar may be able to replace Russia as the EU's primary source of natural gas over time. Why is this?
But I think this also goes back to my point that I was making a little bit earlier as well. The Qatari government has plans to enhance and improve the existing natural gas fields. So a lot of the gas fields and the proven natural gas reserves are undeveloped at this point. I think the Qatari government is dedicating a lot of capital and a lot of resources towards developing those proved natural gas reserves. So that should be something that can enhance Qatar's ability to export natural gas to other parts of the world. And even though they're locked into contracts in Asia, maybe in the next couple of years or so, there's an avenue to develop new contracts and actually be the primary natural gas and energy provider to Europe and the European Union. So I think you'll probably see those efforts pick up pace a little bit more in the coming years and decades or so. And again, as kind of the globally coordinated and the sanctions regime on Russia persists and stays in place for the foreseeable future, that really just opens up a path for Qatar to be not only a large natural gas exporter, but possibly the largest natural gas exporter in the world.
Dan, thank you so much for this interview in Negocios Televisión. Thank you so much for giving your view on what Qatar has at stake in this World Cup. Brendan McKenna, international economist and FX strategist at Wells Fargo Securities. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bueno, y nosotros mientras tanto vamos a cambiar de